Good afternoon. One person's in hospital with serious injuries following a fire at a home in Scarborough.
Flames broke out early this morning at a residence on Prince Philip Boulevard near Kingston and Morningside. CTV's Janice Golding has been following this investigation and joins us live with the latest. Janice.
Hi, Michelle. Yes, as you can see, fire crews are still on scene here in Scarborough after a fire ripped through a home in the early morning hours. You can see orange flames shooting through the roof, completely engulfing a Scarborough home. Toronto Fire says the first calls came in at around 4:30 a.m. We are told police were the first on scene and actually located the woman on the first floor just inside the doorway. Paramedics say she was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The home is located on Prince Philip Boulevard near Kingston Road and Morningside Avenue. Neighbors describe how they were awakened last night.
At around 4:20, we were all sleeping and we heard banging on the door. And I ignored it because I'm like, who's banging on our door at 4 o'clock in the morning? But then I heard my daughter go down and I was just waking up to find out who was banging. And all I heard was my daughter saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I started to go down the stairs and my entire bottom floor was orange. And I thought the fire was in our house, and I went to the kitchen, and I could see through our side kitchen window that it was our house the house next door.
I was fully involved when our first crews arrived, so it was quite a substantial fire. That is under investigation at this time.
Again, the cause of the fire is not known. However, Toronto Fire says the woman is expected to make a full recovery and be released from hospital shortly. Reporting live from Janice Golding. Now back to Michelle.
Well, that is good to hear. Thank you, Janice. Meanwhile, one person has been taken to hospital with minor injuries following a separate house fire this morning. Emergency crews were called to a home on Doris Drive near O'Connor and St. Clair. This was just after 5 a.m. Fire crews are investigating the source of the flames.
And firefighters battled flames at a Boston Pizza in Scarborough overnight. Crews were called to the restaurant near Scarborough Town Centre around 2:30 in the morning. Toronto Fire says the heating unit on the roof burst into flames. No injuries have been reported, and the cause of the fire is still under investigation. And one person has been taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries following an industrial accident. It happened on Progress near Constantino Drive in Schick Court around 10:30 this morning. Toronto Fire says the victim had to be extricated from a forklift. The cause of the accident remains under investigation.
One person has been arrested for impaired driving following a crash on the 400 this morning. The OPP posted this video of the scene on social media. They say the two-vehicle crash happened on the southbound 400 at the 401. So far, there's been no word on whether anyone was injured in this crash.
Newly re-elected Premier Doug Ford spoke publicly for the first time since his election night victory last week. His comments focused on Donald Trump's tariff set to come into effect tomorrow.
You have two choices here, folks. We roll over as a country and just let them run over us, or we fight like hell, like we've never fought before. I'm taking option 2. I'm fighting like hell, and we're going to protect Canada. He's underestimating the Canadian people, the resilience of the Canadian people, and the strength of the Canadian people.
Ford was speaking at the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada annual convention. He spoke about expanding the mining sector to build the economy to protect Ontario's interests against possible tariffs.
Communities across Canada are preparing for the impact of those U.S. tariffs.
This morning, Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown outlined a new Canada First procurement policy aimed at supporting local businesses. CTV Sean Leathong's been following this story and joins us live with more. Sean.
Well, Nathan and Michelle, Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown saying that we simply cannot rely on the U.S. export market anymore, and we have to focus on a made-in-Canada approach. Now, this new procurement strategy says that going forward, if the tariffs are put in place, the city of Brampton will focus only on sourcing material, goods and services from Canadian companies. They're also going to look at their contracts, perhaps with existing companies, to look at the possibility of cutting out U.S. suppliers from the city of Brampton's current procurement processes. He says there is a thriving steel industry in the city of Brampton, thriving auto industry. He says that 25% of the manufacturing jobs in the city of Brampton rely on U.S. auto industry, and he says there has to be some sort of change if these tariffs do come into place, because the city itself has over $1 billion worth of money that they can put into the market. So he says it's important to focus on local businesses. This comes just a few days after he put together a tariffs task force to talk about the possibility of removing interprovincial trade barriers and support for local businesses in the face of any possible tariffs. Here's a little bit more from Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown.
Going forward, as long as the tariffs are in place, we have $1.9 billion in active procurement, and we will opt in for Made in Canada. Made in America products will not be eligible. And we're also going to look at all existing contracts to see how we can even look at the contracts that have already been in place, if there are clauses that would allow us to change to Made in Canada products.
Now, the mayor was asked why not do this Made in Canada approach regardless of what happens tomorrow, and he said that currently under the free trade agreement with the United States that U.S. contractors do have the ability to bid on procurement in the city of Brampton, and if they are the lowest candidate, they're legally obligated to take that. But he says if the United States is willing to break their side of the agreement, Brampton is willing to look at theirs. He's also pushing at the region appeal a similar motion and calling on mayors from across the country to do the same, saying there's $30 billion in procurement dollars that come from Canadian cities, and if Canada acts as a unified approach, they can make it feel the pain down south. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Nathan and Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. Still to come, more reaction to the possibility of U.S. tariffs. The 25% levy is set to take effect tomorrow. We'll have more on how Canadians are feeling about the trade situation a little later in the newscast.
There will be an early closure on a portion of the TTC's Line 1 this week. Service on Line 1 between Bloor-Yonge and Osgood stations will end at 11 p.m. each day through to Friday. The early closure is to accommodate maintenance in the area. Shuttle buses will run in place of regular trains.
And we have more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. We're coming off a chilly weekend, but temperatures are gradually rising today. And this week, there's also some rain in the forecast. Lindsay Morrison's here with a look at the current conditions. Lindsay.
Well, Nathan, one of those days this week could end up being a bit of a washout, but you're right. We are climbing out of the deep freeze. Yesterday, early morning, the temperature was minus 16 degrees in Toronto. Right now, it is -1. And this afternoon, we're going to be above freezing. We've got winds coming from the southwest. That's allowing milder air to cross the border and make its way into southern Ontario. A little bit of cloud in areas right now, but otherwise, it's pretty dry at this time. Do want to mention a little bit of a heads up for overnight tonight. We could get into maybe a few flurries, maybe a few rain showers. There's also the possibility of a little bit of mixed precipitation, ice pellets, or some light freezing rain. That's after we enjoy a mix of sun and cloud today and a high of 2. And yes, there's several active days in store for this week. We'll take you through the 7-day forecast coming up. For now, Michelle, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with King Charles at Sandringham Estate this morning to discuss a number of issues with the monarch. So far, there's been no statement from Buckingham Palace or the Prime Minister's office about the specifics of this discussion. Yesterday, Trudeau stated he would speak with the King about matters of importance to Canadians, specifically U.S. President Donald Trump's threats of annexation. King Charles, who is officially Canada's head of state, has not weighed in on the threats.
Canadians are waiting to find out if U.S. President Donald Trump will follow through on his threat to impose tariffs tomorrow. Trump has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods, as well as a 10% levy on Canadian energy starting tomorrow. If that happens, the federal government has indicated it will respond with dollar-for-dollar tariffs. And CTV's Scott Hurst has been following the tariff situation and joins us with more. Scott, Canada has complied with Trump's demands for tighter border security. There's a fentanyl czar. Why is he still threatening these tariffs?
Nathan, we're hearing from some in the Trump administration that Donald Trump himself will decide today whether to go ahead with the 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods that could be implemented as early as tomorrow. Border security has been a big issue, and of course, we've seen Canada really beef up its side of the border and stop the flow of fentanyl, and that has been a key concern of the Americans. Although what we're hearing from Trump administration officials is that still not enough is being done. And from Donald Trump himself late last week, he said this in the Oval Office, that drugs are still pouring into the country, despite evidence that a crackdown at the border is working. So despite what we've seen from Canadian officials pouring more resources and more money at the border, Nathan, it appears, at least for now, according to the Trump administration and the U.S. president himself, not enough is being done to stop the flow of fentanyl at this time.
There's also a new survey out about how Canadians feel about tariffs. What were some of the key takeaways?
Yeah, Nathan, we're tracking a new Leger poll that really talks about how Canadians are feeling about the U.S. president and how they feel about tariffs. The overall impression of the U.S. president is this. About 77% of Canadians have an unfavorable impression of the U.S. president. How Canadians feel about the trading relationship, also quite strained. 83% are very or somewhat concerned about the impact and how Trump may be using it to force more control over Canada. And so that is the trading relationship question. But when it comes to retaliation, more than 7 in 10 Canadians strongly favor or somewhat favor a dollar-for-dollar response. And we have heard that Canadian government is ready for retaliatory tariffs if they do get imposed tomorrow. When it comes to how Americans feel about tariffs, it is quite different than Canadians. Just over 30% say that they're in favor of tariffs on Canadian goods. Now, Canadian citizens and Canadian consumers appear to be pushing back against all the threats we've been hearing from south of the border, and 66% say they've reduced purchases in American-made goods, and that is in-store. 63% say they've reduced purchases for American-made goods in online shopping as well, Nathan. So Canadians have more Canadians have an unfavorable opinion to Donald Trump and are quite concerned, rightly so, about the threat of tariffs, but also in strong support of retaliation if they do get imposed as early as tomorrow, Nathan.
All right, CTV's Scott Hurst with the very latest on the Canada-U.S. trade relationship. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Hamilton could be hit particularly hard if U.S. tariffs go through as planned. And today, one of the perceived frontrunners in the race to become the next prime minister was in Steeltown, insisting Canada cannot back down.
We need to be resolute. We need to recognize that with this White House, weakness is a provocation and capitulation is not a negotiating strategy. So let me be very clear with our American neighbors. If you hit us, we will hit back. Our retaliation will be dollar for dollar, and it is going to really hurt because Canada has leverage. We are the largest market for the U.S.
Chrystia Freeland believes there will be American job losses and business closures. She says the best course of action for the U.S. right now is to find an exit ramp and return to the previous relationship between the two countries. The Liberal Party chooses its new leader next Sunday.
And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada is not yet willing to commit to a plan to put Canadian boots on the ground to secure peace in Ukraine.
We're not going to get ahead of the discussions on how to keep a peace that isn't yet in place, but Canada will be there and is open to doing what is necessary.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says a group of European leaders will form a coalition of the willing to defend Ukraine. He hosted a summit in London this weekend in support of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, following the leaders' tense meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in the Oval Office on Friday. There was no U.S. representation at the summit. Trudeau was the only non-European leader in attendance. David Lavery, better known as Canadian Dave, is back in Canada after spending 77 days as a prisoner of the Taliban in Kabul.
Now the veteran is sharing his experience and his plans for the future. CTV's Josh Morano reports.
It's surreal, but it's a day many thought would never come, or at least not this soon. But after he was held captive by the Taliban for 2 months, Dave Lavery is coming home.
It's lovely to see all my friends and families. You know, you could feel the love and you can feel the genuine care, you know, and I felt that even when I was in my cell.
Known as Canadian Dave for his work rescuing more than 100 families in Kabul with Canadian ties, Lavery was kidnapped and thrown in jail by the Taliban, who thought he was a government spy.
Coming back and just experiencing normal environment, normal life, the cold, driving, being able to go to a restaurant, seeing people when I want to see people, laying in bed with my wife now.
We are strong. We family is strong. I'm proud. My husband, he goes through this really tough situation. I'm really proud of him.
With help from his wife, along with the Canadian and Qatari governments, Lavery was freed from Kabul on January 26th. From there, they went to their current home in Dubai before traveling to his hometown of Winnipeg, then to Vancouver. Now, Lavery is back in Perth, where he spent 30 years of his life with the armed forces, greeting friends at the Legion and retelling stories of his time in captivity.
Physically, to be able to see them, sit down and thank them, you know, I felt so bad by putting everybody in this situation. I really did. Even though I didn't do anything wrong, it still was hard on me.
During those 77 days, much of the time I felt like I was there with him. And I don't know whether he was able to sense that or not, but hopefully he got some comfort from my thoughts.
Now that Lavery is home, he says his time in Kabul is over, but adds he's not done helping those in need.
We still have operations and support in Ukraine, etc. But I'm going to slow down a little bit and take a little more of a break here and do a little more, you know, delegate, because I was doing a lot of my own stuff on my own.
Josh Morano, CTV News, Perth.
One person is dead and several others injured after a vehicle rammed into a crowd in the German city of Mannheim. One person has been taken into custody following the incident this morning in a pedestrian square. Police have not confirmed exactly how many people were injured or if there are any other suspects. The incident follows a string of recent attacks in Germany, including 2 deadly ramming incidents in Munich and Magdeburg.
The Vatican says Pope Francis rested well overnight and remains in stable condition in hospital as he continues to battle double pneumonia. Today, tourists in St. Peter's Square offered prayers and support for the 88-year-old pontiff. Pope Francis has not made a public appearance since entering hospital 18 days ago. This is the longest he's gone without appearing in public since his papacy began in 2013. Doctors have not indicated how long his treatment may last. Lindsay.
Well, with the arrival of March on Saturday, we also welcomed meteorological spring. And you know what? It's going to feel like the season at times this week, beginning with today. And believe it or not, these highs, some of the cooler ones we will experience this week. 2 degrees in Toronto, will be up around 7 by about the middle of the week. And just an early heads up for you that we spring forward next weekend. A reminder to change any clocks that need changing forward by 1 hour before you go to bed on Saturday night. The official time change happens at 2 a.m. on Sunday. We're going to take you through the 7-day forecast. We've got some rain to talk about. It's coming up after this.
A one-of-a-kind natural wonder has made its way to Toronto. The Giga Pearl, worth over $100 million, is on display at Avant-Garde Studio. That's where we find CTV's Jessica Smith this afternoon, who joins us live with more on this precious pearl. I got to see this thing, Jess.
Listen, my reaction when I walked in, Michelle, was wow. Francis behind the camera, his reaction was wow. And it really is hard to fathom until you see it in real life. I'm joined by Ryan Schott. You're here with the gallery representing the artist Abraham Reyes. Talk to me about this world record holding pearl, because it is 1,000 years old. It weighs over 60 pounds. This is something to be seen.
Yeah, this is a very special day. We're here with the Giga Pearl. It's a one-of-a-kind wonder of nature. As you mentioned, 61 pounds. It's 16 inches in length, so it's a very special moment right now.
Now, we're getting kind of an exclusive because this is not here all the time. This is really, really special, but there are so many other works by the artist, so a Toronto-based artist with Abraham. Talk to me about the story behind this pearl, because it really is mind-blowing when you walk downstairs and you see it, because we are kind of following the beneath the surface theme, which is what this is all about.
Right, I mean, the pearl in itself is spectacular. It's a natural pearl, so it's naturally occurring in nature. It was found in a 4-foot clam, which is, if you picture that, that in itself is pretty amazing. But it's the only one in the world, and it's certified by the GIA. As you said, it's a world record-breaking specimen. So very, very special indeed.
And not just this obviously mind-blowing pearl, but all the works here are by the same artist. Tell me a little bit about his story, because these are so unique, and there is a really unique cultural kind of tie into all of this.
That's right. I mean, the art in itself is a celebration of, you know, the natural wonders of the world, and he thinks that anything natural is the most beautiful and precious thing. So what he's done is he's tried to express that through art, and His pieces, what make them so unique is that they have natural wild pearls and natural gems in them.
It really does kind of take your breath away because you look at them and your eyes are trying to catch one thing or the other, and it just is so phenomenal. We have another pearl here. It's hard to believe that pearls come in this size, but talk to me about the idea behind this particular piece we're looking at now.
No, it's great. I mean, the distinction is these are natural wild pearls. So most of the pearls we see today, 99.5% of them are cultured, and there's human intervention. So what makes these so special and rare is the fact that they're naturally occurring in nature. So it's very rare to find one.
And I have to go over, there's one here. So I've never seen anything like this, but it's got actual insects in the work. So talk to me about this one, because when I saw it, it kind of took my breath away. We have about 30 seconds left.
Yes, this piece is very special. These are natural queen wasps from the Philippines preserved, and this piece represents female empowerment and queens bonding together to raise each other up.
It really is unique, and that piece in the middle you told me is a brooch.
It is a brooch, and you can unhook it and wear it as a pendant, so very multifunctional art.
In my absolute wildest dreams. The exhibit here will be here until March 18th. The pearl, though, is exclusive, so you have to book an appointment just to come see the works themselves. We're getting an exclusive look at the world record-holding Giga Pearl. Ryan, thank you so much. We're going to send things back in studio, and I'm going to keep looking at all the beautiful works of art.
It really is beautiful. Thank you. Thanks to both of you.
And that octopus.
Ooh, but it's the pearl we're looking at. The pearl. Cool octopus, too. Brand new week here. We're into the month of March. And fortunately, you're going to notice it's a little bit milder because the weekend was frigid.
It was very cold over the weekend, and I just kept on looking at the forecast thinking, okay, in the next few days, temperatures are finally going to come up.
Yep.
And we're not talking snow, we're talking rain, which I can deal with.
I think we'll take the trade-off, right? Slightly milder temperatures, rain instead of snow. And we mentioned how cold it was over the weekend. You know, yesterday morning, the temperature was minus 16 degrees in Toronto. The last time we had a March low that low was 10 years ago. So, yeah, it had been some time. We are looking at a warm-up as we make our way through this week, but we've got some active weather to go along with that. Weather is brought to you by the Pressler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. I think it was a pretty nice start to the new week this morning. Check out that sunrise. Yeah, it was cool again this morning. A little bit of a nip in the air for sure. Our milder air is moving in as we make our way into this afternoon. Starting to see it and feel it already in extreme southwestern Ontario. It's 3 degrees in Windsor right now. Still very much winter in northern parts of Ontario. And as you'll see, when we get rain later this week, that part of the province is getting another significant round of snow. And this afternoon, we're going to climb to around 2 degrees, which is seasonal. Average daytime high at this point on the third day of the month of March is in fact 3 degrees. Tonight, we're going to slip just back below freezing, and that makes things interesting because we do have a chance of showers. But because the temperature might be a little bit on the cool side, we might see some ice pellets mix in. There might even be a brief period of freezing rain, and then again is overnight and into early tomorrow morning. Then tomorrow at a glance, mostly cloudy day, daytime high of 5, and so that brings us a chance of rain showers heading into the afternoon. Now, here's the current satellite and radar. We've had some cloud. We will enjoy some sun at times today, too. But what is waiting in the wings, or I should say just developing right now, is a Colorado low, and that's what's going to bring us the more significant rainfall as we make our way a little later into this week. First, here's overnight tonight. So as mentioned, maybe flurries, maybe ice pellets, maybe a brief period of freezing rain for some. And then tomorrow, daytime is going to be dry at times, by no means a washout, chance of showers into the afternoon. But here comes Wednesday, and especially overnight and waking up Wednesday morning, we are expecting rain, heavy at times. Periods of that rain expected to be on and off throughout the day. Might even get a couple of rumbles of thunder as we make our way into Wednesday evening if all the dynamics are there and in place. So a heads up on that too. At this point, it's looking like anywhere from 10 to 15 millimeters of rain could fall on Wednesday. Depending how this low ends up tracking, some areas are going to see even more than that. So here's a brief look at the 7-day forecast. High of 7 degrees by Wednesday. Cooler on Thursday to about 2. But it looks like our daytime highs just about every day this week going to remain above freezing. That's the weather for now. Nathan, over to you.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. The Maple Leafs will be looking for a 6th straight win when they face off against the San Jose Sharks tonight.
Nylander winds it and shoots, scores! William Nylander with a lightning strike overtime winner!
The Leafs are coming off a 6-5 overtime win over the Pittsburgh Penguins yesterday afternoon. Puck drop for tonight's game is against San Jose, set for just after 7:30 at Scotiabank Arena.
And still to come on CTV News at noon, taking a look back at the Oscars, the big winners and big moments. We've got the highlights just ahead.
Here's a strange question. When you get injured, does it hurt more or less if the injury is a surprise?
Dan Riskin, CTV Science and Tech Specialist, is here to tell us the answer today. Dan, you had this question since 1991 when you saw the movie Bugsy. Set this up for us.
Okay, yeah, so my brother and I watched this movie, and there's this scene where Warren Beatty is reading a newspaper, and he's having a domestic dispute with his wife, who's played by Annette Bening. And as he's reading the newspaper, she throws an ashtray at his head. And it goes through the newspaper. Actually, here's the scene right here, so you'll be able to see it. She picks up the ashtray, she whips at his head. He doesn't see it coming, and it hits him in the temple. My brother and I were obsessed with this scene. We talked about it for hours. Does it hurt more because he didn't see it coming, or would it have been better if he'd seen it coming? So basically, does the surprise increase the amount of pain? And the new study, finally, 34 years later, gets at this. They did a bunch of experiments with virtual reality and real life where people knew when to expect. There was a thing on their arm that gave them pain, and it's a harmless pain, but it really does hurt. And sometimes you would expect it, sometimes you wouldn't. And what they found from this experiment is the surprise makes it hurt more. So Warren Beatty was hurt more by Annette Bening, and I was right, my brother was wrong when we had that argument.
It took 34 years.
Yeah,
all right.
As long as I win, I don't mind waiting 34 years to be right.
And speaking of, I guess, losing your cool, a study says that when men lose their cool, it affects how women see them in terms of how smart they are.
Yeah, they look dumber, which is kind of intuitive, because I think when I lose my cool, I'm not my smartest self, right? I act like a bit of an idiot. But this was a really fun study where they asked husbands and wives, and they looked at all these different husbands, they measured their IQ, and they asked them, are you hot-headed or do you tend to keep your cool? And across couples, there was this really clear correlation that the men who lose their cool more often, their wives tended to think that they weren't that bright. And when you actually look at the IQ scores compared to how hot-headed they are, the wives aren't wrong. There's a signal there that people that aren't as smart tend to lose their cool more often.
You're not going to win the argument, so why bother?
Yeah, you got to keep your cool. Well, you're famous for being cool as a cucumber at all times. So.
What happens when the women lose their cool?
They didn't study that. I totally wanted to know exactly that. I was like, what about the other side? But they did not measure that.
Okay, so we're talking about trade a lot today because of looming tariffs tomorrow, and you've got a success story related to an export from the 1990s. This is about 31 gray wolves taken from Alberta to Yellowstone Park. Why is this making science headlines today?
Well, it's making science headlines because they've been, ever since so Yellowstone's wolves had gone extinct. They'd been killed in the 20s, and they didn't have wolves, and the ecosystem was out of balance. And so in the 90s, biologists grabbed some wolves from near Banff, and they brought them to the Yukon. Brought them to Yellowstone. They did 2 imports in 2 separate years for a total of 31 wolves, and the wolves have been there ever since. And so they've been studying that ecosystem since then, and there's a new paper out showing that it was a huge success and that the ecosystem was dramatically changed. And in fact, what's happened is a lot of plants have really come back because the elk that were just eating everything, it's not so much that the elk are all dead because the wolves ate them, it's because the elk are all scared of wolves, so they hide more, and so they don't go out in the open and eat all the plants. And so they've just shown that this really works. And I think, at a time where we're thinking about the trade and the tariffs and all this other stuff, it's just nice to have a really salient reminder of the time that the U.S. needed some wolves. Canada came through. They did not put a tariff on that, and it's been a success story. And I think it's a nice metaphor for what great things can happen if these two nations just get along.
Right, great relationship.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Take care, Dan. Well, it's weather news. The 97th Academy Awards were handed out last night, with Honora taking most of the awards.
CTV's Andrea Case has more on the show honoring the very best in Hollywood.
Just you. Kicking off the Academy Awards, a duet by Wicked co-stars Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. It brought the audience at the Dolby Theatre to their feet. The show was hosted for the first time by Conan O'Brien.
I know what you're thinking. Did Conan not have work done? Seriously. He looks his age.
Best Supporting Actor Kieran Culkin won just about every award leading up to the Oscars, but the real prize may be 2 more offspring. His wife jokingly promised if he ever won an Oscar.
And let's get cracking on those kids. What do you say?
There were a number of firsts. In the Best Supporting Actress category, Zoe Saldana.
My grandmother came to this country in 1961. I am a proud child of immigrant parents with dreams and dignity and hardworking hands. And I am the first American of Dominican origin to accept an Academy Award, and I know I will not be the last.
Paul Tazwell called his Best Costume Design win astounding.
I'm the first black man to receive the Costume Design Award for my work on Wicked.
The creators of the animated film Flow were the first Oscar winners from Latvia.
We're all in the same boat. We must overcome our differences and find ways to work together. Thank you.
And this from actress Daryl Hannah.
Slava Ukraine.
Winning Best Actor for a second time, Adrian Brody for his role in The Brutalist. Best Actress went to star Mikey Madison, who portrayed a sex worker in Honora. Honora, an independent film shot for $6 million, won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Film.
To all of the dreamers and the young filmmakers out there, tell the stories you want to tell. Tell the stories that move you. I promise you, you will never regret it.
Andrea Case, CTV News.
The latest film from Marvel Studios held on to the top spot at the box office for a 3rd straight weekend.
Watch yourself. You're not Steve Rogers. You're right. I'm not.
Captain America: Brave New World earned $15 million to retain the top spot. Last Breath placed second, taking in nearly $8 million in its first weekend in theaters. Horror film The Monkey rounded out the top 3, earning just over $6 million in its second weekend.
A group of artists in Montreal are expressing their concerns about the city's housing crisis.
They've turned an abandoned building into a squat as part of a call to actions. CTV's Lawrence Brisson-Dubray reports.
Tucked inside a crumbling industrial building near the Lachine Canal, a room fit for a high-end condo.
There's $4,000 of wood. There's thousands of dollars in just the tapestry.
But artist Marc-Antoine Goyette says this installation is not just art. It's protest of a housing market that keeps many out.
This problem is about living out of the need of others.
Completing the work took 4 years, involving hundreds of clandestine trips in and out of the 28,000 square meter building, says architect Gabriel Lacombe.
One of the hard part was how do we get all this stuff inside the building? Because obviously it's like we're not supposed to be there.
Once a factory, then a storage space, it's been abandoned since 2013. The city of Montreal took over, and in 2021, it announced a plan to redevelop the property. In a statement to CTV News, a city spokesperson says, "We are in discussions to finalize the sale of the building with the selected company, Sidley Architecture." Meanwhile, the city says it regularly secures the building to prevent entrance due to dangers like mold, asbestos, and collapsing roof. City officials say they warned the artists of the risks, but Goyette says that only strengthened their message.
What's more dangerous than people living at -20 outside?
The project was funded by a $25,000 grant from the Canada Council for the Arts. Goyette sees the irony in that.
How can you destroy this now? It's public money.
To underline the seriousness of the housing crisis, the room was listed online for $400 a month.
I received 200 and something messages in like 6 hours.
Goyette says the space serves many purposes for artists and those who need a bed for the night.
People are sleeping right there.
Squatting in abandoned buildings isn't a solution to the housing crisis, but Goyette says neither is inaction.
What we experience right now is not an economical crisis. It's a social and a moral crisis. It's how resources and power is distributed.
Danger signs, barricades, and barbed wire haven't kept people out. The door is open, and the message is clear. Laurence Brisson-Dubreuil, CTV News.
Still to come, comedian Mike Myers generating buzz online with his cameo appearance on Saturday Night Live this week, and we'll have those details when we return.
Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Well, the Oscars have been generating a lot of buzz online, with people reacting to the results and viral moments during the broadcast. For more, we're joined by Sam East, host on 99.9 Virgin Radio, for our regular Monday segment, Chronically Online. Great to see you, Sam. Great to have you the day after the Oscars. Tell us some of the big moments that people are talking about.
Yeah, I think we've got the highlights covered by now. We know the big winners. We know Conan O'Brien hosted, but the lesser maybe covered moments. Of course, we know that the Oscars are big on fashion, right? Like, this is the time for the celebs to show up and show out. Unless, of course, you are Adam Sandler. If you're Adam Sandler, you are probably grabbing the hoodie that was resting on your chair beside your bed, you know, that pile that you usually have, and just throwing it on and saying, this is good enough for me. So he definitely stole the show in some moments there. And he reenacted a bit that was referenced back at the Golden Globes. I think we have a clip of it here with Timothée Chalamet.
You are all welcome to join me for a game of 5-on-5 basketball at Veteran Park tonight. Midnight tip-off, the guy from Nosferatu. Where is he? He's on my team. One more thing. Chalamet!
And if you do recall, that is in reference to a moment that happened at the Golden Globes a few weeks prior. So there's some callback there. It's now a running joke with Adam Sandler and the way that he says Timothée Chalamet's name. And I mean, look at all the stars. They're in their gowns, they're in their suits, and there's Adam Sandler. He could not care less, and that's what we love him for.
I love it. Yeah, not so stuffy. That was a fun moment for sure. Sam, a certain canine was a big hit at the Oscar after parties. Tell us about this.
Oh, this is going to steal your hearts. So Selma Blair has a pretty well-known companion, a date at a lot of events that she goes to. The Vanity Fair after party is like the pinnacle of after parties at the Oscars. And Selma Blair showed up with her service dog, Scout, a 4-year-old golden retriever by her side. Okay, so they're posing up on the carpet there, looking beautiful. And then the celebs, look at them in their gowns. They're just on the ground playing with Scout in their fancy outfits. I just love that juxtaposition of the glitz and glam with the simplicity of having a golden retriever at this swanky event.
I know, and nice she let them, normally you're not supposed to pet service dogs, but it looks like she's all game for it, and it really, it lightened the mood a bit.
Yeah, and it was just a nice thing to see, a nice break from the fanciness of it all.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a favorite moment from the Oscars yesterday?
Oh, it would have to be Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande opening the whole thing with their wicked medley that they did. I mean, they brought the house down to start the show, so they set the bar very high.
Honestly, every single note was exactly like in the movie. They're some of the best singers in the world. Just incredible. Switching gears a little bit, because the Oscars was, big news over the weekend, but also SNL this Saturday, and a fellow Canadian, Mike Myers, making a cameo, and he's getting attention for his wardrobe. Tell us more.
Yeah, so this is actually his first regular appearance on a regular SNL episode in over 10 years. He appeared on SNL 50, but this is a regular episode. And he played the part of Elon Musk. So it is in the cold open here. I'm not sure if we have the clip to pull up for that.
Disrespectful. Who shows up to the White House in a T-shirt and jeans like a garbage person?
Oh, goodness. Lots of people raving online about this impression that he did of Elon Musk, and also how quickly they turned that around. And there is Mike Myers showing off a shirt that says Canada is not for sale. So a not so subtle political statement that he's making on an American television show. Clearly, the team behind him was in support of that. I feel like they would have yanked that away if that wasn't supported. But he said his piece.
Oh, I know. So satisfying, right? And then you had Tate McRae there, Canadian from Alberta. So it really was, it felt like, there's a lot of America that supports us.
Yeah, we had some good Canadian representation on SNL this past weekend. So it's nice to see, especially given everything that's been happening over the past several months.
It's a busy day, busy week for sure. 99.9 Virgin Radio, Sam East, great to talk all things entertainment with you. Appreciate it. And by the way, we'll let our viewers know you can catch her from 2 to 5 p.m. on Virgin Radio. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle.
Take care.
The village of Athens, Ontario, located northeast of Kingston, has applied to be this year's Craft Hockeyville community.
This competition awards one lucky community an NHL game, as well as money to upgrade and revamp their local arena. CTV's Jack Richardson has the details.
A typical Sunday at the Centre 76 Memorial Arena. Hockey moms like Bailey Wykes and Colleen Kelly are here for their kids' games and practices 5 to 6 times a week.
We're actually at the rink more than we are at our own homes. This is our second home.
The arena has been a pillar in the Athens community since 1976. It's the home rink for the Athens Arrows and the Leeds Chargers Minor Hockey Association.
Centre 76 is really the hub of the town.
The rink is a pretty big hub for the residents of the township and surrounding area that use the rink.
That's why Athens has applied to be a Craft Hockeyville community to pay for upgrades at the arena.
Everything in the arena is pretty much original. I think the township's probably been able to keep up with the upkeep as times went on, but no real big major improvements like you see in other major centers.
Being selected as one of the Craft Hockeyville communities would be like winning the lottery for Centre 76 Arena, but it is a long shot. There's about 400 other communities across Canada that have applied, but the funding is still needed for this arena. Just look at this piece of plywood that's replaced the plexiglass at one end of the rink. From the boards to the benches and the dressing rooms, upgrades are well overdue.
I guess in a sense we all grew up here. My grandkids are growing up and playing here as well. My 2 daughters figure skated here for many years, so I have a lot of history of being in this rink.
Gord Johnston also has a history here, driving the Zamboni for the first time in the 1980s.
It's just nice to have an arena in this small community and that people really enjoy coming here, and it would just be nice to see it continue for future generations.
Nominations for Craft Hockeyville close before midnight Sunday, and the 4 finalists will be named later this month. Jack Richardson, CTV News, Athens.
Coming up, turning a driftwood donation into a piece of art. We'll have more on a special sculpture and its connection to the past. An artist in BC has turned a driftwood donation into a large sculpture.
As CTV's Adam Sawatsky reports, the piece has a special connection to the woman who provided the material.
While Adele Hatch can walk to the water now, she recalls being driven there as a child, thanks to her mom, Doreen, being the only woman on the street with a license.
Every other woman and the kids were stuck at home unless the husbands took them.
So Doreen would regularly squeeze Adele and her sisters, plus a few of her friends, into the back of her Beetle and embark on an adventure at the beach.
I will call her a force of nature, a fabulous force of nature.
During one of those beach days, Doreen discovered a remarkable piece of driftwood, strapped it on the Beetle, and drove it to her garden, where it sat on display for more than 30 years.
It was wonderful.
After Doreen died, Adele showcased the log in her yard for 2 decades, until she happened upon the work of driftwood artist Tanya Bob and offered it to her.
And I said, you'll do much more with it than I will ever do.
So Tanya gratefully accepted it, and like her previous work, expected to use it as a component in the construction of some sort of creature.
I would sort of look at the thing and I'm like, no, it's not a bear. And I'd be like, okay, come back 2 months later. I don't see a Sasquatch here.
It wasn't until a year later that Tanya finally saw it as kelp waving in the water, was inspired to start bending chicken wire into a shape she could perch on top of the stump, and eventually made a massive mermaid that she named the Fabulous Doreen.
And I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Adele couldn't believe 2 things. First, she'd never told Tanya about Doreen's passion.
My mother loved mermaids, absolutely loved them.
And second, Adele had never shown Tanya any photos of her mom, let alone this picture of Doreen perched on a wall with her arms stretched out in a strikingly similar pose.
I couldn't believe that that was basically my mom in mermaid form.
And while it could be coincidence, and certainly serendipity, maybe, they say, it's something more magical.
I think she kind of inhabited that wood a little bit and was a little bit whispering in my ear.
But no matter the explanation, Tanya's donating proceeds of its sale to a charity in Doreen's name, and Adele is hoping whoever takes the mermaid home is inspired to be fabulous in the same way Doreen was.
Find something you enjoy and bring that joy to others as well.
Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Victoria.
All right, mermaid, water, rain. There's the transition.
Although not so much this afternoon. It's going to be pretty nice if you want to get outside. Temperatures more comfortable than they were over the weekend, and it's not nearly as windy as it was on Saturday. Here's your evening stroll forecast. Just be mindful of the fact that as we make our way through the overnight hours, there's an elevated chance of some mixed precipitation because the temperature is going to be at or just slightly below freezing. Tomorrow, though, in the afternoon, we climb to a high of around 5. So any precip that we get tomorrow afternoon, likely to be rainfall. There's the school day forecast. It's Wednesday where you're really going to need the umbrella. It looks like periods of rain right throughout the day, maybe even the risk of a thunderstorm. Nathan and Michelle.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. And that's CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.